make much of a correction, but we have 105,000 members and 11,000 college students. And are the sole remaining fraternity that calls itself a Jewish fraternity. It's my pleasure to introduce the first of three recipients. Well, I was asked to change the order only because with, congressmen and senators, they have other appointments, and I'm now going to introduce the person that I have known the longest of any of the three. And I've known Josh Gottheimer for almost 22 years. He was an outstanding leader in the Alpha Epsilon Pi fraternity chapter at the University of Pennsylvania when he was a student there, and he served with me in later years on the fraternity's foundation board. He was first elected to Congress in 2016 and represents New Jersey's 5th Congressional District. While campaigning, much to the chagrin of the Democratic Party, he publicly announced, mind you, he hadn't even been elected, he publicly announced his opposition to signing the Iran nuclear deal, going against President Obama before he was even elected. He is only one of 4 Democrats not to sign a letter read at the 2017 AIPAC conference because he felt it was not fully supportive of Israel. Josh introduced the U.S.-Israel Common Defense Authorization Act, which would permit the president to protect Israel with the massive ordnance penetration bomb, which is capable of taking out Iran's undergraduate nuclear infrastructure. Pretty good for a freshman. Needless to say, he was an enthusiastic supporter of the move of the American Embassy and the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. In 2017, he introduced the bipartisan Combating BDS Act to help states, local governments, and asset managers fight back against the politically motivated boycott of Israel. He was a behind-the-scenes Democrat, urging his party to join Republicans in support of the Lamborn and Royce-Engel-Taylor Force Act. His commitment to Israel is irrefutable. Josh is a perfect choice for the Speaker of Truth Award, and it's my pleasure to call upon him to receive this award. Brother and Congressman Josh Gottheimer.
Evening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Phil, for that incredible honor. And thank you so much, Ahmet, for having me. And thank you all for being here this evening. And Phil, thank you for being a brother and a mentor and a leader of the Jewish cause, and for standing by Israel and by Jewish young people across America every single day. So thank you very much, Phil Cohn. I do want to thank Sarah so much for your leadership, and its staff and board members for what you do. It's incredible how you put this together, and this just keeps growing, and your impact in Washington is felt on both sides of the aisle. And Senator Scott, it's an honor to be here with you, and I know Chairman Royce is going to be here, and so it's a significant honor to be standing here this evening as a Democrat. And Mark, I hope I don't make your show in that way tomorrow. So I hope I'm mentioned in a positive way. But I'm deeply honored to be at the 12th annual Rays of Light dinner, and I thought it was very special as a freshman to be given this award. Right, obviously, as just a freshman to be recognized here tonight. But I did run into my friend and colleague, Brian Mast from Florida, and he was on the way over after votes, and he got this award 2 years before he was even elected to Congress. So much for breaking a record. As has been mentioned, this is a momentous time for Israel and the U.S. For 70 years, the United States and the State of Israel have fostered and strengthened a remarkable relationship. This alliance, rooted in our shared values of freedom and democracy and the rule of law, has developed into one of the most extraordinary partnerships of the modern world. I've always believed that the bond between the United States and Israel is and will always be unbreakable. But unfortunately, in recent years, Israel has been increasingly vilified on the world stage and used for political and partisan gamesmanship here at home. I refuse to accept that, and I think it's more important than ever for members of both parties, Republicans and Democrats, to remember our ally Israel's strength and strategic importance to our country, to America, to our security in the region, in the fight against terror, and to remember always, whether it's R&D or our own military might, whether it's our economic might, that Israel must not and cannot become a partisan issue. And as been mentioned, I think we have to be vigilant about this because we do see cracks forming. It's why in Congress, as was mentioned, I have consistently refused to sign on to any partisan, one-sided letter or bill when it comes to Israel. It's why I lobby my colleagues on my side of the aisle all the time about the strategic relationship and not to get blindsided by fake truths, by information that is simply false day in and day out, that's poured into the psyche about Israel. That's why some of my left-leaning colleagues publicly lambast me for not going along to get along with some of their hyper-partisan views on Israel. It's tough, but I think it's essential that we stand strong. Emmett's efforts, thank you. Emmett's efforts to recognize and inculcate strong support for Israel on both sides of the aisle demonstrates your ongoing commitment to strengthening this historic bipartisan relationship. The achievements of this relationship speak for themselves. Whether it's counterterrorism cooperation between the U.S. and Israel has saved countless lives here in America and around the world. Israeli technologies protect American troops stationed in the Middle East, and our relationship has given rise to a thriving, independent state of Israel, with America's embassy in its eternal capital, Jerusalem. And Emmett has been a visionary leader all along the way. When the president recognized the reality that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, I applauded as a Democrat. And then on cue, there it went, the biased United Nations General Assembly voted to criticize Israel and the United States for choosing to locate our embassy there. I find it remarkable that the United Nations cannot seem to lift a finger when it comes to pressing issues like war-torn Syria, where Assad uses chemical weapons against his own people, and yet they seem like they can hardly wait to convene a special emergency session to denounce Israel, our key ally in the fight against terror. Explain that to me. It's why I introduced a bipartisan House resolution with Republican Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin and House Foreign Affairs Ranking Member Elliot Engel, condemning the UN General Assembly vote and highlighting that body's long history of bias and anti-Semitism when it comes to Israel. And just last week, Representative Lee Zeldin, who is also a terrific leader in the fight, we introduced a bipartisan joint resolution supporting Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas in Gaza. Hamas fires rockets and digs terror tunnels into Israel, murders and kidnaps Israelis, and uses women and children as human shields, all while residents of Gaza suffer from a humanitarian crisis of its own making. It should be clear that Congress stands with our ally Israel as it defends itself and its citizens against this heinous terrorist group, and we must make sure we keep repeating that to Democrats and Republicans. For years, Emmett has been clear-eyed about the menacing threat posed by Islamic Republic of Iran. You believe, as I do, that the revolution of 1979 marked a cataclysmic setback for global security, for Israel, and for the basic rights of the Iranian people, the longest-suffering victims of that corrupt terrorist regime. In recent years, we've seen how Iran, flush with sanctions itself, has only increased its support for Hezbollah and Hamas, propped up the Assad regime, and advanced Iranian-backed forces throughout the region toward the Mediterranean, pushing right up against Israel's border. I think Mark talked about this best. He saw it with his own two eyes. You can see this with your own two eyes. We cannot and we will not allow such a threat to Israel. For many of these reasons, I strongly oppose the Iran deal in 2015, and on the heels of the president's decision, we must ensure that the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism is never able to threaten the United States or Israel with nuclear weapons. And I want to recognize Ahmet for your incredible work to combat the hateful anti-Semitic boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement here on our college campuses and around the world. Thank you so much for building support among Democrats and Republicans for efforts like combating BDS and the Israeli Anti-Boycott Act. And thank you so much for fighting with such fierce conviction for the Taylor Force Act, of which I was also proud to co-sponsor. Thank you. So let me wrap with this. And obviously you, I hope, can see I'm convicted about this issue. And we need more Democrats who are as well. I want to recall Sabbath Eve, May 14th, 1948, when David Ben-Gurion and members of the provisional government stood beneath a portrait of Theodore Herzl to read aloud and sign the Declaration of Independence of the modern state of Israel. Just before they signed their names, they made an appeal to the Jewish people throughout the diaspora to rally around the Jews of the land of Israel in the task of immigration and upbuilding, and to stand by them in the great struggle for the realization of the age-old dream, the redemption of Israel. Today we have an obligation to help realize that same dream. It is the dream of Jewish families the world over who scrape together spare coins to fill the Jewish National Fund tzedakah boxes. The dreams of the survivors of the Shoah in Europe and their descendants for their eternal homeland, for people who had lived through centuries of persecution. The dream of families gathered at Seder tables in New Jersey and across this great country, saying in unison, "Next year in Jerusalem." Thank you so much for recognizing me this evening and for all you do. I know that's not always easy, but let's never shy away from the vital task of standing up for our ally and strengthening the enduring relationship between the U.S. and Israel. Working together, our best days will always be ahead of us. Thank you. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you, and thank you very much.